Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Farah Adlin binti Nazim.
And my name is Nur Fatin Aisyah, Mohd Fauzi.
Inshallah, today, both of us will present The Morning is Coming, a discourse analysis on John Boyega and Tyler Perry's speeches in response to BLM movement. So before we going any further, let's start with the introduction first. Next. All right, for the introduction. First of all, Black Lives Matter, BLM, was founded back in 2013 after the murder of Trayvon Martin had been acquitted. So the aim of this establishment is to put an end to white supremacy, as well as to become the local power that can help in stopping violence inflicted to the Black. And recently, George Floyd's death on 25th May of 2020 has re-sparked #Black Lives Matter for people all over the world. And these can be seen through global protests against racism and police brutality faced by the Black community. So the aim of our paper is that, first, we want to identify and analyze how John Boyega and Tyler Perry position themselves as members of Black community who fight for justice. Number two, how the out-group and in-group are represented through John Boyega and Tyler Perry's perspectives and words. And number three, how other participants, mainly George Floyd, as well as other people, other victims who lost their lives in the hands of the police, are being given a voice. Next. So the methodology for this paper is that we take two videos from YouTube, a full video of their speeches, and then we're going to apply transitivity analysis as well as the representational strategies of participant and action on these two speeches. Moving on.
Moving on to the first findings of John Boyega's speech in London. So we first analyzed John Boyega's speech through his representation of self as a member of Black community, where we found that he positioned himself to be a part of a Black community by using first person pronoun we in addressing the mass. For example, we don't live here and stop. We can all join together. And in some instances, he used abonics or AAVE, negation ain't. And relating this with social identity theory, it can be seen that he is using the in-group language to solidify his identity into the community. And also, we have also analyzed John Boyega representation of in-group and the out-group, where the out-group in this case are they or the racists and people who are against the protest, and then the in-group is we or us, the Black people and the protesters. As you can see here, because you know what guys, they want us to mess up. So here, the in-group is foregrounded while the out-group is backgrounded, as the out-group is only mentioned twice in the whole speech. So like the in-group is the subject of attention, as right it should be, as this issue is pertaining to the Black people only, pertaining to Black people. And regarding on John Boyega representation of other participants, we see that he nominated social actors like George Floyd, Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, Stephen Lawrence, and Mark Duggan. These are the references to the victims of police brutality. As what he wants to do here is these names should be remembered and as it should be honored. And now findings number two about Tyler Perry.
All right, so moving on to the second speech. So the first one is, we can see in this speech is Tyler Perry's representation of mistreatment received by him. And how can we see this? By the use of material processes that can be found in the first section of the speeches. So for example, I was pulled over by two white police officers, walking to school, high school, being stopped and frisked. I was searched simply because I was Black in white neighborhood, being made to lay down on the ground while they searched me for no reason at all. So this is related to the second point, where Tyler Perry's representation of active and passive participants. It's very interesting because although the main subject in this speech is he himself as well as the Black community, but he identified himself as the passive participants. Why? Because he's the one who received the consequences of the actions done by the white, which mean that the white, although only mentioned only several times and similar to previously, they are only backgrounded, but they are the active participants. And this can be seen through the sentence, white women getting off because I'm 6'6" and Black. Next. All right. Tyler Perry's representation of in-group and out-group, similar to the previous speech. The in-group and out-group of these people, of this speech, the in-group are the Black people, which can be seen. The level of racism and brutality that George Floyd faced is something that we, as Black people, know all too well, while the out-group is the white people. I'm exhausted from watching white children get away with crimes because their parents had a discussion with the judge over a game of golf. And similar to the previous speech as well, Tyler Perry used nomination in giving names to the victim of this racial injustice. For example, the mention of the name Terrence William as well as Philip Santos in his speech. And on the other hand, he used functionalization to highlight the role of the people who commit the injustice. They mysteriously disappeared at the hands of one sheriff's deputy. Next. And we also want to point out the repetition of I am exhausted in the speech. So we believe that he's repeating this for two reasons. The first one is to emphasize he is truly tired of what is happening because this racial injustice have occurred for too many times that he doesn't really know how to react anymore. That's the first one. And the second one is that we think that he wants to mimic Floyd cries of I can breathe that was repeated about 16 times. And also the lexical tool that is used here, in his speech, majority of his speeches consist of simple words, which make the message of the speech is really easy to be received by the listener because it's very straightforward. However, there are some fancy words such as egregious, vitriol, and arduous used in his speech, and we believe this is used to establish his identity as a writer. Moving on.
And now we're moving on to discussion. So to amplify this analysis more, we have related the analysis to systematic racism and police brutality that has haunted America for a long. And in the BLM movement itself is fueled by these unfair treatments received by the Black community. And we can see that Tyler's speech, as Tyler Perry has used, has spoken about the prejudices faces growing up in his speech. And for your information as well, African American are most likely to be policed and being searched without proper warrant than the whites. And these are stem from the institutionalized racism in the police departments itself. And hence, this these speeches are shown to be anti-racism and anti-brutality. And then there's the issue of how Black Lives Matter movement has now become a worldwide movement, where the growth of social media has powered this BLM movement to most part of the world. We have seen statues of colonizers and racist figures being taken down around the world. And Jones Boyega's speech also has taken place in a London protest. And the Black Lives Matter movement hashtag has trended on Twitter for days, and these are the effect of Black Lives Matter movement in general. And then we are moving on to the conclusion now. So despite putting their careers at risk, we can see that both John Boyega and Tyler Perry have used their reputation instead to, as Black celebrities, to be a solid voice for other Black communities. And they identify themselves to be on the side that fights for equality, as well as they give voice to those who has lost their life to police brutality by honoring and remembering their names. And their speeches can be in a form of acknowledgement, call of action, and a call for solidarity and also inclusivity. And Black Lives Matter movement is not about denying the value of our lives, but instead, Black Lives Matter movement is asking to be valued similarly to other lives. And I think that's all from us. We stop here. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.